Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Zealand Charter Township for the MACC Policy Board meeting. Today is June 5th, 2017. We'll start out with introductions, and maybe, John, if you want to start out.
John Cornexel, Allen County Road Commission.
Sally Gruffel, I'm all full, sorry. City of Zealand, Mayor Pro Tem.
Tom Bird, Ottawa Road Commission.
Terry Hoffmeyer, Lake Township.
Jerry Hunsberger, Park Township.
Joe Bauman, Ottawa County Commission.
Linda LaFavor with Macatawa Area Express. I'm subbing for Russ today.
Glenn Nykamp, Zealand Charter Township.
Terry Nienhuis, Holland Township.
Ken DeWeer, Fillmore Township.
John Lanham, Michigan Department of Transportation, Lansing.
Tim Story, Allen County Board of Commissioners.
Rob Bank with the MACC.
Kelly Goward with the MACC.
Elisa Huckwater with the MACC. Ellen Olsted with the MACC. And Mike Sal with the Muskegon TSC of MDOT.
Matt Koyman with Congressman Bill Heisinger's office.
And I'm Steve Boltice, the Executive Director of the MACC.
And I'm Pankaj Rajadhyaksha with the MACC. So welcome again. And then our first item is minutes from our last meeting, which was April 24th. Does any changes or corrections to the meeting, to the minutes? If none, can I get a motion to approve?
I move.
Okay, Jerry and Joe. Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Yep. Okay, minutes are approved. At this point, we typically open it up for any public comments. I don't know if we have specific members of the public, but
Here to see what you guys are up to.
okay. All
Any
right.
questions afterwards?
Okay, great. Well, thanks for coming. First up, I think we have the proposed 2018 budget, and Steve, you're going to cover that for us?
Yep. So you may recall at our April meeting, I had provided some of the themes or broad overview of the budget and what I saw as the major factors that were going to be impacting that. And certainly as the budget together, I think a lot of those factors or themes track right on with the final product that was sent out to you. I sent it out in advance of the agenda packet. You received it about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. Hopefully you had a chance to take a look at it. What was included in your agenda packet is the exact same document. If you had a chance to review it, you'll see that we're estimating revenues from fiscal year 2018 of $852,252 and expenses at $838,326. So we are balanced, not a huge cushion there, only 1% or so, but we are balanced. Pleased to announce that we are able to achieve that without having to raise dues, either on the stormwater watershed side or with the jurisdictional dues. So we're thankful for that. FY19 may be a little different story, but we'll take that in the future. But for today, pleased to be able to announce that. And just a couple of those main points. Some of these I touched on already at the April meeting, but were included in the cover memo as well. You did see our largest single funding source is what now we call the Consolidated Planning Grant. We used to call it Section or PL 112 and Section 5303 planning funds. Those were condensed a year or so ago. You'll notice that those dropped slightly, 20,000. Really, that number that you see in line item number 1, and when I refer to line items, you can follow along in that budget report. It's the far left column are the line numbers. So if you hear me reference a line number, that's the one you want to look to. And I'm looking at line item number 1 there, and you saw a reduction. The reason for that reduction, and return to that 249,701, that really is kind of an historical level. When Congress passed the FAST Act and put those authorization levels in there, we did see a small increase in the Consolidated Planning Grant or the planning funds that came about as part of FAST Act, much smaller than previous authorizations. But the reason we had that additional 20,000 was a specific requested amount in FY 17, the current fiscal year, for funding. And that's why that was a one-time deal. Now we're going back to an historical level. So that's what you see in line 1. You will notice, especially on the watershed side, as you look down the revenue items under governmental funding lines 1 through 16 there are a number of grants that are ending on the watershed side. Most of those are fairly small in size, but a couple of them are larger as well. So certainly that is going to be a change between 17 and 18. And then we have certainly something that's kind of new to our budget. It's implemented in 17. It continues on in 18, and that's line 16, the Community Enhancement Program. You'll see that there's a reduction in that budget as well, as you may recall. To kind of seed that program and get it cited, we took $25,000 out of retained earnings or fund balance to help get that rolling. You'll see that it's not my intention to continue that in FY18, so that's why you see the $25,000 down reduction there. So, as always, governmental funding is the largest revenue component of the budget. You'll see there in the governmental funding side, we're at $576,000 roughly. So again, that is important to note, and particularly on the watershed side, we are always seeking grants to help support that program. And we've been very successful in doing that, and staff is keenly aware of the need to continue trying to secure those, and we'll continue to do so moving forward. Jurisdictional dues, you'll see the note there at the bottom of just below line 30. The good news on that 0.5% increase is that it's a 0.1% increase higher than the 10 or 15 year annual average that we've seen in jurisdictional dues over time. This year was 0.5% or $797. We had a conversation about that regarding how tying jurisdictional dues to population, how that worked, really well through the 90s and early 2000s, not as well this last 15 years or so. But it's still in a positive territory, so that's certainly helpful. Those are based on the FY15 U.S. Census Bureau population estimates. So those come in at 162,000. And then certainly a number of you are also supporting the watershed project through the watershed stormwater dues. That provides that essential base level of support to that program. As the note in the comments column on the far right side notes under line 43, we're again budgeting 110,000. That level has been the same since 2005. So we've been able to hold that line, again, due to the success that we've been able to achieve with securing other outside grants to support the watershed project. So it's been like that for over a decade now. So and then at the bottom, there's a couple other small revenue sources that come in there, interest on our fund balance and other resources that we have with financial institutions. And again, the total revenue at $852. I do just want to underscore again that while your dues are not the majority of the revenue line items in the budget, we don't get the top part if we don't have the bottom part, because we need the match to secure all those other grants. So it is absolutely essential to have those jurisdictional dues and watershed stormwater dues. So we're very grateful for your contributions in that regard. Anything on the revenue side? If not, beginning at the bottom of the page there of the budget are the expenses. Of course, we have our two core programs reflected in the budget, the transportation side and the watershed side. So the direct expenses to transportation begin at the bottom of page 1 with line 49. That, of course, payroll overall, if you had a chance to look at it, is a little better than 50% of the budget, which you see in a service organization like the MACC. The transportation is all of Elisa's time and a portion of my time as well as Carolyn's time. That's what makes up line 49 there. You'll notice as you look through the expense line items, as it's mentioned in the cover memo as well, most of those line items remain constant from the current budget. So we're trying to hold the line in terms of expenditures in that regard, and I'll point out a couple deviations from that. One thing that I did note was that on line 56, and I should have mentioned it back up with line for the data collection revenue, and then you see the expense side of data collection there at the top of the second page, line 56. For a number of years, we took a small portion, usually around 15 to 17,000 of federal funding, and put it into data collection effort. We had pulled back on that for a while because we had other resources. That returns in this budget and is reflected there, 17,000 in revenue in 15 going out contractual. Most of that money is used for traffic count collection. So line 65 there, direct expenses on the transportation side coming in at 291, 380. And then we do have something new in this budget, and that relates to the direct expenses related to the community enhancement program. As I mentioned, you know, the revenue side there, line 16, 37, 932, and you'll see that same amount on line 66. So we envision that everything that is collected from the participants' contributions will be expended in supporting regional assets. So that's in and out in that regard. And then the direct expenses for watershed begin on line 68. And that first item there, the payroll expenses, that reflects the salaries for Rob and Kelly and a portion of Carolyn as well. So that's what comprises that line item. You'll notice some reductions in some expenditures as studies and grants expire or wind down. The related expenses end as well. Line 79 is an important one, thinking ahead to FY19. You know, one of our major funding sources, the GLRI grant, is the last year of FY18 is the last year of that grant, 3-year grant. So that's something we need to keep in mind looking ahead to FY19. Line 84 shows expenditures for the watershed project of $334,010 there. And then lastly, indirect expenses, just a reminder on that. These are expenses that are not directly attributable to a specific task or program like transportation or watershed. So that takes care of our utilities, copy paper, things of that nature. So those are the expenditures that you see there. Of course, the largest change in those, most of those are constant from FY17. The largest change is in line 102, where we are kind of returning to historical levels under office equipment maintenance. We had a large expenditure this year after the computer hack and putting in place a new server and more robust data backup activities and so forth. Some of which, of course, were one time, but there are some, having a more robust data backup plan did have some expense associated with that, and that's shown in line 92, that additional $4,200 for that more enhanced data backup system that we have in place there. So indirect expenses, $175,003 for total expenses on a line 12 of $838,325. So we have a balance there of almost $14,000. And I should just point out, it's at the bottom of every budget year after year. We do appreciate it if you can remember as you're going through your budget process to set aside approximately 25% of your jurisdictional dues that could be utilized if a grant opportunity or study opportunity or something comes along where we can bring some federal funds to it, but we'll still need some local dollars. You know, if you have that set aside through your budgeting process, that's very helpful. We haven't tapped it in quite some time, but it's nice to have that. Be happy to answer any questions regarding the proposed FY18 budget.
Well, I'd just like to make a comment, Steve. Thank you for putting this together and the work that you put into it. But over a greater scale, being a member of the Executive Committee and the Policy Board, I just want to report that the Executive Committee does review every year the annual performance of Steve, and wanted to report that the results, again, or at least for this year, I hadn't been a part of it previously, but the results were excellent, and Steve does perform at a high level, and we appreciate your work and what you do for this community and in this particular policy. Your compensation, of course, was adjusted according to what you see here, the salary adjustments, and we appreciate what you do.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate those kind words, and certainly, part of one thing I learned very quickly enrolling that you need to have a great team around you in order to be able to perform at the level that I think you all expect, and I desire to be at, and so I have to share that with my coworkers as well, and there are salary adjustments for them. If you had a chance to read the cover memo included in this budget as well, but thanks, Terry. Appreciate that.
Okay, any questions on any specifics on the budget, or?
Steve, have you ever looked into cyber liability insurance? You were talking about your computer hack last year.
No, we have not talked about that, but that may definitely be something to consider, because I mean, when we called our IT consultant, is works cited, and told them what happened. They said, oh yeah, we're dealing with lots of these. They have a whole team in their office devoted to helping clients recover. And so I said, oh, what do we need to do different to help make sure this doesn't happen again? And their response is, oh, it's not a matter of if this is going to happen again, but when it happens again. What's the system we can put in place for you to recover as quickly and as seamlessly as possible? So that wasn't the most encouraging thing, but I've read up on it a fair amount since then, and indeed that's probably the best tact to take in this case. So we feel we've got a great data backup system in place now to help with recovery. I mean, it was trying, certainly getting through that, but yeah, I'll check into that. So
We print everything out now. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Like to make a motion? No, I'm just kidding. Okay.
Speaking of motion, though, a motion to
Yes.
adopt the proposed FY18 budget as proposed would be appreciated.
So moved.
Terry moved.
Terry and Terry, I think.
Terry and Terry. Okay, great. Okay, so up next,
We've got to vote on that. Vote on the
a
motion.
little bit out of it.
So we get out of our reading a regular meeting cycle.
I know. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next up is the transportation program. I think Elisa is up, and we'll talk about the Unified Work Program.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to just remind you a little bit of some of the previous conversations we've had regarding the UWP. And I'm actually going to stand to the side slightly so that you can see the screen. You'll recall this is an item we've put on the agenda for several months now. First, to just discuss initial tasks that were proposed. And then we've also been reviewing state requirements for planning, as well as federal requirements. And last month we were talking about the 8 planning principles that have always been kind of the core that we work with when we're addressing federal requirements. And I shared with you that there were 2 new planning principles that were introduced with the latest transportation legislation. So we've never dealt with them directly. Tourism, resiliency, are 2 things that we've not directly dealt with, but we are going to work to incorporate those requirements into the planning process, using many of the projects that we currently have, and basically just wanted to make sure you knew that that was one of the new requirements. And before you have the completed UWP document. So I just wanted to begin by asking if anyone had any questions about any of the tasks. And in the cover memo as well, we broke down for you just a percentage of how we spend our time. So for administration, meetings such as today, the policy board presentation and putting together meeting summaries and the materials, that task is about 15% of our time. Short-range planning, 20%, special projects and studies, 25%, and you'll see the larger task, which many years is starting out the long-range transportation plan, reviewing SE data, which is the socioeconomic data. That long-range planning task is 40%. So wondered if there were any questions? No questions?
I did not remember in the past that one of the requirements of planning was advancing environmental justice analysis. Could you explain that to us?
There is actually a section in our long-range transportation plan where we map the MACC region, and we look at how we program our transportation dollars. But we're required by law to show the impact that that investment has on the community. So that's the process that we refer to as environmental justice, to make sure that the amount of money that we're investing has a positive impact on the community and not a negative one. So there's a very prescriptive process for EJ analysis. That's the nickname that we use for it. But it's basically taking a layer, using our GIS system, a layer of all the transportation projects, and then a layer of minority areas and low-income areas to make sure that it's a positive impact.
Well, just an anecdotal comment, since we have a representative of our congressman here. I'd invite you to take a copy of this with you and sit down with Bill and go through it page by page and let him see the kinds of constraints that are inflicted upon us in meeting federal requirements. It all comes with a cost.
And performance measures certainly are a large part of the long-range planning that we're focusing on. But thankfully, I should say, and John Lanham is here from MDOT, that we are working with MDOT and with our other MPO partners to get through that process as efficiently as possible.
Yeah. Well, that's true, and your comment, Tom, is kind of on point as well, in that when we're working with some of these federal requirements, well, as an example, the performance measures, we have a specific line item coding for our time so that we can be able to, in the future, tell the federal government exactly what we're spending on adhering to their performance measure requirements. So, and that was one of our comments in the development of those measures, is that federal government, you're asking us to meet these requirements, but you're not providing any increased funding for that, for us to do that. But so anyway, you're correct in your initial comment about that. So.
Are there any?
Sorry, Lisa.
Oh no, I think that's a good plan. Many of the notices of proposed rulemaking, when we have the opportunity, we ask for flexibility in implementing those requirements. So. Any other questions about the tasks that we're proposing for the next fiscal year? Okay. Part of our protocol is to read the resolution. So if you can all hear me, I have a bit of a cold, so I'll try and read it quickly and loudly. The resolution is on page 4 of your UWP document. Resolution of the Macatawa Area Coordinating Council Policy Committee approving the fiscal year 2018 Unified Work Program. Whereas the MACC is the organization which has requested designation by the governor as being responsible, together with the state, for carrying out the provisions of 23 USC 134. And whereas the MACC is responsible for overseeing the metropolitan transportation planning process and making related decisions in the Holland urbanized area. And whereas the metropolitan transportation planning process for the Holland urbanized area has been certified according to the requirements of 23 CFR 450.334. Now therefore be it resolved that the MACC Policy Committee adopts the Unified Work Program for fiscal year 28 with any modifications to the document brought to the committee at the appropriate time. I just realized I jumped the gun by reading that aloud to you. You will be making a motion, and then this will be signed by our chair. So.
Okay, somebody want to make a motion?
To adopt the resolution there?
Adopt the resolution?
Just run.
Jim,
Jim?
can I get a second? Sally? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
All right, we have another action item for your consideration, and that is to authorize staff to enter into a contract to conduct a traffic study in downtown Holland. You may recall that last year we had bid savings of $65,000 that came from a project, and we never like to turn those back into Lansing, so we looked for another opportunity to repurpose those funds, and you approved allocating those towards a traffic study of downtown Holland. So that was approved and put in our unified work program, and we weren't quite ready to start it yet, but we wanted to make sure we secured those funds, which we did. So now we have moved forward and have put together a request for proposals and had sent that out, and today we're hoping to get approval so that we can negotiate a contract and get started on it. So when we talk about downtown Holland, I want to make sure we're all thinking the same thing here. So the study area is the crosshatched area here. At the northern end there is the River Avenue Bridge, or Unity Bridge as it's called now. So as you'll see, the study area does extend beyond the city of Holland proper. The study area does incorporate the River and Douglas intersection, which is under the jurisdiction of the Ottawa County Road Commission. Likewise, on the western end of the study area, it extends to the intersection of 8th Street, where Chicago Drive comes in as well, which is under the jurisdiction of Ottawa County. The rest of the study area is within the city. The western end stretches over to Vinralty Avenue, and the southern boundary is 10th Street. So, you know, land area doesn't feel like it's that much, but you start counting up the intersections in there, and that's one of the challenges that we're facing with this project is the data collection component of it. So the major components of the study that we're going to be taking a look at is to analyze both existing as well as future traffic characteristics and conditions. So as I just mentioned, there's like 20-some intersections located within the study area. So we've had to go through and kind of prioritize what are the major ones that we want to take a look at. I should point out, and I have in the past when we talked about this, you know, the reason the MACC and its funding is in this study is because 7th and 9th and River and Pine are regional facilities. So they certainly serve a purpose beyond facilitating local traffic. So the MACC and the greater area has an interest in what happens in those corridors in particular. So we want to take a look at how they're operating today. And so there's a significant amount of data collection around that. And the RFP and the intent of this study is really to go beyond vehicular, that we really want to take a look at the transportation needs of all users. So certainly we're going to be looking at vehicular, and that's going to be a major focus, and that will include freight as well. There's a number of establishments that receive shipments, so there's freight movements happening in the study area as well. But we want to make sure that transit is taken care of. You know, Linda has shared some concerns about, you know, ingress and egress from the Padnos Transportation Center, so we want to take a look at that. And certainly pedestrians are a major component in the downtown area, so we're not talking just about the roadway network. We're going to be looking at the sidewalk network as well. So it's a pretty intense data collection effort. And we're also bringing in the seasonal variation that downtown Holland experiences. So there's going to be data collection in summer as well as non-summer. So we make sure we get both of those because we think there are different uses going on between those two seasons, and we want to make sure we're collecting data when Hope is in session as well. So suffice it to say, there's a significant data collection, and to the point where the RFP does include micro simulations at 7 intersections, priority intersections, to validate the existing conditions. So there'll be cameras placed out there. So once we get together, we run the software. We'll use a program called Synchro for this. But then we're going to go around a couple select locations and do some micro simulations to make sure we got it down to a 15-minute interval. So we're going to tighten that down, at least at those intersections, quite tightly. Horizon year, 20 years out, 2037 will be our horizon year. You know, downtowns are like gardens, right? They need to be maintained, and they change all the time, and their land uses are changing. That's happening right now in downtown Holland, and that block between River and Pine. We anticipate that will continue into the future as well, so we'll do our best guess and look into our crystal balls as to what the changes are going to be and try to model those for the year 2037 as well. I talked about, you know, all users. We're also taking a look at a few other things as well in terms of there's an interest in taking a look at freight movements not only with downtown but how they might impact the rest of the truck route system in the city of Holland, so that's been included. We also are looking at the CSX main line comes through downtown, so where it crosses 8th by the Padnos Transportation Center, 9th by the post office. We're also interested in the spur that runs through the Padnos Yard down to Hines, River and 6th Street. We're going to take a look at those train crossings as well, their frequency, what impact does that have on the various users as well. So we're hoping to roll that into it. There have been mid-block crossings placed in both 7th and 9th, and there's an interest in taking a look at those and see how those are being utilized and so forth as well. So we hope to incorporate some mid-block crossing evaluations into it as well. So once we've collected all this data and have a chance to analyze it so we get a good operating model for existing conditions, and then we take a look at the future as well, we'll start to look at some alternatives. Do we want to keep everything the way it is today? Do we want to make adjustments? You know, 7th and 9th and River and Pine are one-way pairs at this time. One of the things a consultant will look at is in the future, does it make sense to keep those as one-way pairs or not? So that is certainly one thing we'll take a look at, as well as some of those other items I just mentioned as well. And they'll start with a universe of probably 5 to 7 alternatives at a fairly high level, and through a public input process and so forth, we'll just kind of narrow those down to a recommendation, or I'm guessing it's going to be a set of recommendations that come forward at the end of that as well. So when we're done, we'll have recommendations for vehicular, for transit, for pedestrian, existing and future as well. And the RFP does envision and call for a very robust public involvement process. We anticipate that, we kind of envision there are 3 user groups that the study needs to make sure we're connecting with. Certainly the general public, as well as stakeholders. We see those as merchants and other property owners in the downtown area. And then certainly the public sector, the jurisdiction that owns most of the network, the City of Holland and City Council, as well as the city's traffic committee, which is an interdisciplinary team made up of law enforcement and planning and engineering and so forth. There's also, of course, the Ottawa County Road Commission, since this is going to impact their network as well. So there are going to be a lot of different constituents, I think, that are going to be very interested in this, and we're committed to working with all of them to make sure that we get their input and come out with the best solution possible. The steering committee currently are the folks who have skin in the game. So the MACC has representatives on it, the City of Holland does, as well as Hope College, who's also participating in this study. And moving forward, we haven't completely decided and finalized if this is going to just remain those 3 entities, or if we'll pull in a few other from some of those other public components to kind of act in terms of the steering committee, or if we'll just, as we're going through the public process, I think there's like 15 or 16 public input sessions as part of the RFP, so we may be pulling in some of those other groups and just kind of keep a core group in terms of the steering committee and so forth. And then lastly, the timeline. And my hope today is that you're able to act on the proposal in front of you. Since this has more than $25,000 in federal funding, MDOT also has to approve this contract, so it'll go through a approval review process with them as well. I'm hoping we can still get that done this month, so we can turn the consultant loose next month, so we can get a nice chunk of summertime for the consultant and probably other entities. I think the data collection, frankly, is going to be more than the consultant can do for the money we have available. So I think some other resources are going to have to be brought to bear to that as well. So going back to that great team over there, we might be out there with attorney movement counters and so forth, collecting some of the data and helping the consultant out in that regard. But get started in 17, we envision it to be about a year-long process. So the intent is to gather data summer and fall, and then do the analysis and other work through the winter months and spring, and hopefully have it wrapped up this time next year. So, any questions regarding some of that, Jerry?
I see 65,000 is coming from some bid savings on a road project. Where's the balance coming from?
So the other two funders are the City of Holland and Hope College. So Hope put in 25,000 and the City of Holland's providing the rest.
Thank you.
Other questions regarding this endeavor? Jim?
Steve, since you said the horizon is 2035, is that correct?
Yeah, 20 years from 2037.
2037.
Yeah.
So will the study take into impact the likely increase in the use of driverless vehicles?
You know, we hadn't thought about, we haven't discussed that. You know,
all
we
three
talked
of
about
our-
land use changes. I mean, there are several vacant or underutilized parcels within the study area, so we've talked a lot about potentially what happens with those, but we haven't talked about the type of vehicle that might be. But the consultant that we're in negotiations with right now is WSP. They acquired a firm that you may be a little more familiar with, Parsons Brinkerhoff.
Yeah, that's right.
And they are an international firm, so I'm sure they have expertise within their firm that talks about, you know, the wave of the future in that regard. And that could be not only for passenger movements, but for freight movements as well.
Exactly. I'm more interested in the truck movements than the passenger movements, because all three of our original equipment manufacturers in Michigan are heavily invested, as is the state government, in research in that development of driverless technology.
Mm-hmm. That's a good thought. I'll make sure to bring that back to the steering committee.
Thank you.
Are you also including bikes?
Yes, so yeah,
you say
I didn't mention
pedestrian
that. Yeah, bicycles as well, absolutely.
That's great.
Should be interesting.
Yeah. If there aren't any other questions, then a motion to authorize staff to enter into a contract with WSP is the firm that we're in negotiations with right now for an amount not to exceed $150,000 would be appreciated.
So moved.
Support.
Tom and Nancy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
All right, so let's talk about projects for a few minutes, and specifically projects that are on the Michigan Department of Transportation system, or the trunk line system. So we've got a lot of expertise in the House. Steve Redmond has joined us from the Grand Region office, and Leanne, the TSC manager, has joined us as well, and of course, John. And so included in your agenda packet, the department puts out a 5-year program, updates it annually. I don't include the entire document in there. However, if you're interested in what's happening in transportation at the state level, it is an excellent resource. Wonderful, I think easy to understand kind of graphics about the fiscal situation that the department and the state are in as it relates to transportation. It talks about a lot of the other beyond, you know, the projects that are included in the program, what's going on, things that are impacting and so forth in terms of revenue and other interesting things the department is involved in. That's why I include the table of contents in your packet, so you can really see the width and breadth of the and scope of the document itself. But we only have time today to talk about the project, and in particular the projects that are located in the MACC area. in what was included in your agenda packet, I tried to put a little asterisk or star next to those MAC area projects that are in there. But one of the first things I want to note as we get started here is that it is not comprehensive. All the activities and projects that the department are doing are not reflected in that document. I think this tends to be a little higher level, bigger ticket item type of listing. And so what I intend to do right now is talk not only about the projects included in their 5-year program, but also everything else that the department is doing that's included in our transportation improvement program. So the good news that I just want to point out with this is that what you have at your place setting there aligns with the tip. So we didn't see any projects get deferred. Once in a while that happens, especially when there are revenue constraints. We'll see projects get deferred. That didn't happen when I look at our tip and compare it to the plan. We didn't see anything get accelerated either. So everything aligns and it seems to be very congruent. And I already mentioned that doesn't include everything. So let's jump in. You'll notice at the bottom of, I believe it's the new roads page of it, capacity improvement there under repair and rebuild roads 2017. Well, that's referring to the expansion project that happened on US 31 from Lakewood up to Quincy last year. They're wrapping that up this year. If you drive that corridor once in a while, you've noticed that they've been out doing work on the bridges. 4 locations that they're finishing up some painting and work on at Lakewood, CSX line, the railroad line at the Macatawa River, and then BL 196 or Chicago Drive down here. Are all receiving some painting treatment, so there's been some lane closures and so forth, so that they're wrapping those up. And I think, Leanne, they're hoping to get that done, is it July or August, something like that? Leo had sent out a...
Hopefully by the end of June, unless they've been delayed.
Yeah, all right. So then, another project happening in 2017, you won't find it on that listing, is the department's continuation of putting in indirect median crossovers at various intersections on US 31. They've basically been working their way north from the urbanized area for several years now. So it's Bingham's turn this year at US 31. So this image is this is actually US 31 here. So the indirect crossovers through the median are happening on this, and then we happen to have the rail spur heading up to the Consumers Plant, and then Olive Shores Drive is there. Of course, most of you are probably familiar with the West Ottawa Golf Club, which is driveway, and their parking lot is right here. So, West Olive Road, yeah, thank you. So, just remember, if you got a tee time out there, once that project gets started, to build in a little extra time, they usually get in and out of there fairly quickly. $503,000 is the projected total amount. $400,000 of that comes from our friends out of Washington. So federal participation, 80% of that project. On to 2018, a very popular park and ride lot. So we're on BL 196 here. Homestead coming out. Here's the Zeeland McDonald's, as many refer to, is located right there. And you may or may not have noticed that park and ride lot, but it gets a lot of use, and the pavement is starting to deteriorate, so the department's going to get in there and take care of that, resurfacing that lot in 2018 at a cost of $38,000. Continuation of intersection improvements on US 31 in 2018. This time it's going to be up at Berry Street. It happens to be a 3-legged intersection there, so the cost at $350 is a little bit lower. Federal participation on that is $286,000, so that will happen, and the indirect median crossover, indirect lefts will happen in 2018. A project that is included in your list there under the bridge section. It says it's a culvert replacement, but it's $1 million plus project because it's a big culvert. And so the department took care of, so we're on 196 here. This is northbound, eastbound, take your pick and what you like. The convention, you'll notice in your listing, sometimes it says 196 southbound, sometimes it says westbound. The convention I used here was southbound. So they're going to come back in 2019 and replace that culvert on the southbound section of 196 there, and you'll see in a minute that's in preparation for the reconstruction of the roadway in 2021. So a little over $1 million there. Federal participation, $831,000. Then the intersection of Business Loop 196 at 112. So we have the car dealerships. I think there's a Toyota dealership in there and maybe Hyundai or so forth. And then a shopping center up here. And actually another small park and ride lot. Not quite as popular as the one out on Zealand, but that's what's shown there. And so this is also another intersection improvement, taking out that direct left from the trunk line to 112th and putting in indirect left turns at that intersection as well. $625,000 is what the cost has been estimated at. So the Fed amount is $583,000. In 2019, we start to get into some of the larger projects. This one is again southbound or westbound 196. We're going from the CSX line, so here's Lincoln Avenue coming around the runway there. Picks up right to the east of that, continues on to the county line. A little over 2 miles there. It's going to be road rehabilitation. I didn't have a cost for this one. I don't know if anyone else. Leanne's checking her. All right.
It's very small print. About 1.8 million. That's construction only.
Yeah. So that's another component, and you'll see here in a minute they've been working, of course, on eastbound or northbound for the last few years, reconstructing, and now they're working their way in 2019. So here's one segment of that. In 2020, I think you mentioned before that I think this is our dividend that's coming from the enhanced state revenue that we're starting to see, that's been implemented now and starting. Once the legislature passed that revenue package, shortly thereafter MDOT released or updated their program, and this project showed up. So I think it's been on MDOT's radar for a while, but when that additional revenue was passed and they knew that there was going to be that revenue stream coming in, they started to adjust their program. For our area, this project showed up that had not previously been part of the program. So this is to do some work on the BL 196 bridge crossing the MACC River, which is a little tough to see in this photo, but it's running right through here. So a deep overlay and some rail replacement is happening there, almost $1 million. So the federal amount on that, $815. Another bridge that's needs some work. This one's on 196, again southbound, again in preparation for that reconstruction project that you're going to see in just a moment. This is a bridge on 196 southbound or westbound at the CSX overpass, and I zoomed in on this one a little bit just to show you the state that it's in whenever Google came through and flew this. So they are coming in, the department is coming in 2019 and doing some substructure repair, so working on the beams and everything below the deck in preparation for this job in 2021. And here's the big project I've been talking about. It's about 7 miles in total, starting at 130th Avenue, a little south of Douglas. And this is, again, the southbound or westbound lane going up to the split with US 31. So that'll be a complete reconstruction. And that's set for 2021. And do we happen to know, Leanne's already looking at the price tag on that one?
15, yeah.
One more time, Leanne.
16.7 million.
All right. Yikes. So, oh yes, not speaking of other work that's going on, also a 2021 project. Again, 196. So we have 196 going from the split south to 130th. We have 196 again, the southbound from CSX up to the county line, and then one other segment that's happening in the 5-year program, and this one's also in 2021, is that section from the split with US 31 over to that CSX where that other project ended. And Leanne, would you happen to have a number for that one?
I do, 2.8 million.
So that's 2.8. All right. So that's the program that we're aware of today. on in the MACC area. Any questions regarding those? We've got the experts in the house regarding those.
I have another bridge project that's shown in 21 at the CSX Railroad for $400,000, basically, 389, 343. If you have that, Leanne.
What year?
21 also.
Where did you say it was?
At the CSX Railroad.
186
Just a bridge project, yeah.
Westbound, yeah, deep overlay and substructure repairs,
Right.
yeah.
And what was that number, John?
389, 343.
All right. So, given those others, we're certainly north of 20 million in investment on the trunk line system over the course of the next 20%.
Steve?
Yeah.
The reason some of those projects don't show up on here is the funding sources are CMACC, traffic and safety, stuff like that, which doesn't show up in that five-year plan document.
Did I miss any from the list you had?
I don't think so.
I think I am.
Well, thank you, Steve. I know there's been a lot of work done by MDOT in the area for the last few years, and appreciate your support going forward. Next up, we have MDOT. John, if you have any comments or updates that you'd like to share with the group.
Significant other than the Unified Work Program that you just approved, we'll review that in the office and get it over to the FHWA by July 1 is when they would like it. And hopefully they'll all be approved so they can be authorized in August, September-ish. That's all I have.
Yeah, next week, and I'm hoping Elisa can help me out because I left my phone at home and couldn't look it up. But we're going to have a meeting at the Herrick Library next week from 4 to 7 on our non-motorized plan. And what the meeting is about is to bring out the final draft of the plan. We've worked hard with a number of stakeholders and went through a whole public outreach effort earlier in the year, and now we're coming back out with a plan and with finished maps. We're going to have a trail map for the 13 county Grand Region area, and we're going to have a non-motorized plan for the 13 county area. And this is the final draft. This is the last that the public gets to look at this. We'll take those comments. We've gotten very good input. We're going to take whatever comments we got and put that and finish the product. And then once that's done, it's our hope with the participation we've had is that people are aware of this plan. It's more regional in nature. It shows what we have in the 13 counties, what's proposed. We're hoping that in the future it helps determine decision making, where to make path investments, and it also is a reference document that gives those who are trying to do trail projects something to look at with questions that they have coming up. So we've got 4 meetings. We've got one tonight in Ludington, one tomorrow night in Walker from 4 to 7, and then we have 2 next week, one, like I said, the Holland Library, and one at the Hastings City Hall. So do you know which date the Holland meeting is?
Monday afternoon.
Okay, Monday afternoon, 4 to 7. That's the, come take a look at it if you get the chance, or certainly if you know anybody interested in the communities you represent, have them come too, because this is something we really want to use, and I think it's going to be very important to the region.
All right, next item on the agenda, I think Kelly's up to update us on the watershed management plan.
And I brought it with me. So I imagine most of you have never seen the watershed management plan, so I brought it along for my visual aid today so you can see what it looks like. A lot of work went into this, obviously, and you can tell by all my sticky note tabs. I use this a lot. I mean, this is our guiding document for the watershed project, kind of like the Unified Work Program is, and the TIP is for the transportation program, the long-range plan. We just have this one document. And we have other guiding documents for the stormwater program as well. But so wanted to just kind of run through some high-level information as far as what's contained in the plan, and then I've got kind of a summary of some of the progress that we've made since the plan was approved. So this plan went through kind of a 3-year process of development, starting I think in late 2008 and wrapping up in 2012. So it was officially approved in June 2012. I started in August, so all this was done by my predecessor and a whole host of committees and stakeholders and private consultants. This was definitely a partner, stakeholder-driven process, and a lot of work went into it over that 3-year process. And now it's our guiding document. So the plan itself contains quite a bit of background information and history about the watershed, detailed information about watershed characteristics, information about water quality conditions, including quite a bit of information about monitoring and studies that have been done. That's a lot of the appendix documents in there are some of those studies that gives us the data that we need in order to make the decisions. And I'm going to go over some of this in a little bit more detail. Once it gets through talking about the water quality concerns, then it outlines an action plan with goals and objectives. And then also critical areas identification. I've got some maps to show you quickly on that. And then there's a whole outline of recommended best management practices, both the physical practices that would go in the ground, and then also managerial or non-structural best management practices, things like zoning and ordinances and actual just kind of actions that we can take beyond the physical BMPs. And then of course with any good plan, there's a process for evaluation. So a little bit more on the water quality pollutants, and this is essentially a table that's taken right from the plan. So the blue boxes over on, I guess depending on which way you're looking at it, on the left, this is the impairments to our water. So the state monitors water bodies for designated uses to determine if they are impaired based on water quality standards. There's a whole list of designated uses for a water body. So most of the streams, the tributaries in Lake MACC are impaired for warm water fishery and other aquatic life. So it's really a habitat-driven impairments in our system. And then kind of on that second and third priority is the total and partial body contact. So that gets into more recreational uses. And then we have other pollutants of concern as defined by the local community. So our priorities are the ones that the state has listed us for. And so the state goes through a process of determining the impairments and what's causing those impairments. So for the aquatic life and fisheries, the pollutants are nutrient, sediment, hydrology, so that's how the system has been altered and how water moves, and then temperature. Those are the ones that are impairing the habitat. And then for the partial and total body contact, it's E. coli. And then these tier 3 are ones that were identified through some stakeholder meetings as important to the community. So the management plan takes those sources, the tier 1 and tier 2, the ones that are defined by the state, and actually goes through and identifies where do those come from. So where are the potential sources of those pollutants? So for all of those pollutants, what are the sources? And then again, there's a process to go through to identify are those high, medium, or low priority sources. And so I'm not going to read all of those to you, but all that information is in there. In order to address them, we need to know where they're coming from. And then beyond the source, then we can look at the causes. So if we know the source is agriculture, what is causing that? Because we need to know what the cause of it is so we can reverse that or address it with a best management practice. So I know this is kind of hard to read with the colors on there, but this is just an excerpt of a much larger table that goes through each of those pollutants and identifies the sources and the potential causes and ranks them as high, moderate, and low. So again, a lot of information, a lot of input went into this process to determine these priority levels. So then once we get through identifying the sources and causes of these pollutants, then this is where we do our goal setting. So the 3 goals of the management plan are fairly straightforward: to restore water quality, we want to protect the remaining natural areas, and then we want to enhance the watershed for desired uses. So each of those have several objectives underneath them, and just for simplicity today, and since the management plan was approved in 2012, we really have focused more on that first goal, restoring water quality. So I've got the list of those objectives here, and so they relate back to those pollutants. So if we want to restore water quality, we need to remove those pollutants. We have to address those sources and causes. So reducing that sediment and nutrient, reducing the stormwater runoff, that's that hydrology part, the temperature, the E. coli, we want to monitor, and then we want to find out more about those low priority pollutants that we don't have much information about. And you'll notice for the first three there, it's all critical areas. So I'd mentioned that was part of the process too, is identifying critical areas. And this is really important for funders. Every grant that we go after, they want to see that we've gone through a process to identify critical areas so that we can focus in our efforts to the areas that need it the most. So we went through several different processes for this. So on the right, the critical urban areas, there was a process, basically a geographic information system, a computer process model that used a lot of inputs about land use, land cover, how water flows on the surface. There's a whole list of parameters that the process is described in here. That was done for urban and agricultural areas. So we have a similar critical agricultural areas map. Again, it's just based on a model. So then the map on the left here is actually a Project Clarity map. So you may have seen that in relation to Project Clarity. This is based on their sediment sampling. So what we were able to do is to take the actual monitoring data and the priorities that were developed in that process and make that our agricultural priorities. So that work that Project Clarity was doing about the same time, that kind of wrapped up in 2012, we were able to go back to the state and get that included in our management plan and approved as an additional appendix, so then we can use that as our critical areas. One that's based on science instead of based on models. Not that models aren't based on science, but based on a different level of science. So those are our critical areas. And then actually the Project Clarity map is further broken down into these smaller subbasins as well. I just did not choose to show that now. So that whole process is outlined in how we did that in here. So then within those critical areas, then that's where we want to focus our efforts. So then the management plan does recommend best management practices. So again, this is just a very brief excerpt of like a 4-page chart that goes back to those sources and causes and then makes recommendations for each combination of source and cause. So for example here, agricultural runoff, one cause is loss of wetlands. So structural BMP would be to restore wetlands. Non-structural BMP would be to have wetland protection ordinances. So again, for every single pollutant source and cause, there are this level of information there as far as what are the actions we can take to protect and restore the watershed. So any questions about that before I kind of hit some progress highlights? So there's a lot of information in here. If anybody wants to flip through it, it's all on our website too. So some of the progress, and it's really hard to put numeric values on a lot of this, but the biggest thing that I wanted to point out here is that the projects that we've done since 2012 have all been because of the management plan. They're recommended in the management plan. They're meeting some of the goals and objectives that are found in the management plan. So the MyCore stream monitoring that we do, the macroinvertebrate collections, that's part of the monitoring that's recommended in there. Plus then it's also community engagement, which there is a separate section in the management plan for community engagement and outreach activities. The road stream crossing inventory, same thing. That's monitoring, plus there was a data gap. We just didn't have that information that we needed in order to adequately address road stream crossings. So that is mentioned in the management plan. The volunteer cleanup events, that again is community engagement, something we've been doing prior to the management plan development, but that's getting at some of those low priority community issues, namely trash. That was identified as one of those low priority issues. We completed an urban tree canopy assessment, and that was identified in the management plan under the urban priorities as just a data gap. We didn't know that much about it. We need to know about it in order to set goals. So we've done that, and I know the City of Holland has really embraced that and are using the results of that assessment to target tree planting. The Green Infrastructure Assistance Grant, that was one of the first projects I kind of took on in 2012. So that was an example of kind of a non-structural. We did some ordinance and code review for that with the cities of Holland and Zeeland, and then both counties and the Ottawa County Road Commission participated in that. So we're still working through some of those recommended changes on a policy side of things. And then the last two here are a couple of our structural best management practices. So the GLRI and Great Lakes Commission grants implementing those agricultural practices. So I did put some numbers here on these. There's a lot of numbers up here, but I think kind of the take home there is that with that first GLRI grant, we made it about 1% of our goal. So it kind of gives you the scale of what's in this management plan. A lot of work was done, but we only made 1% of our goal because we've got some pretty lofty goals to really get that water quality restored. With the Great Lakes Commission grant, that one is wrapping up this year. I don't think we'll have too much more in this, but on the phosphorus side of the goal, we were able to achieve about 7% of the reduction goals that are outlined in the management plan for that. And then just kind of a few other things that are kind of ongoing. So we do have the second GLRI agricultural grant. So again, working on those structural best management practices. That one is, a year into it, so we don't really have a whole lot of numbers to share, but it should be kind of on par or greater than what we've been able to do with the Great Lakes Commission grant. I mentioned the outreach and education. That's a big part of the management plan, and that's continual and ongoing. Much harder to put numbers on that because we're constantly implementing things, going to community events, writing newsletters. We keep the Facebook page updated. Stormwater management, so kind of beyond the management plan, working with our communities on their stormwater management, both that are mandated by the state in the municipal separate storm sewer system program, the MS4 program. A lot of additional efforts are going on there with street sweeping and just pollution prevention practices at municipally owned facilities that are helping us to make progress towards meeting our goals. And then, of course, we have plenty of partners that are doing initiatives that I don't have quantifications on, but we're constantly looking to partner because there's a lot here and we can't do it ourselves. So certainly Project Clarity has done a lot, and we can pull numbers on that, and they're tracking that. The Natural Resources Conservation Service, our federal partner, they're doing all kinds of practices with farmers in the area. Both managing pesticides, managing fertilizers, also managing manure, putting in structures to contain those things. Conservation districts and the Michigan Ag Environmental Assurance Program, same kind of thing there, working with farmers to improve practices. And then we have a whole host of universities that have been helping with monitoring, which again, kind of hard to put a quantification on that, but every little bit helps. So I know that's a lot of information to condense into a really short period of time, but we thought it was kind of a good time this month to just provide a reminder about the management plan and the work that we're doing. But this really is our guiding document that we pull all of our information from, all of our ideas from. We don't really come up with this stuff on our own. We do utilize this plan quite a bit. So I'd be happy to take any questions if anybody has them.
Okay, if not, thanks, Kelly. Appreciate the presentation and a lot of the work you guys do behind the scenes. Appreciate it. Up next on our agenda is administrative issues. Steve, I think, is going to cover the monthly financial report. and the executive committee report.
That's right. Included in your agenda packet was the monthly financial report with financial activity through April. So we're showing revenues at 44.9 and expenditures of 32.8%. At this point, certainly that amendment that you had passed cleaned up a lot of things. Of course, we have new revenue sources coming in, but that's where we're at right now. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have regarding the financial report. All right, and then a summary of the last executive committee meeting was included as well. Happy to answer any questions regarding that.
Okay. Well, thank you, Steve. We'll turn it over to Glenn. Glenn, thanks for hosting us, and open the floor to you.
Thank you. Appreciate everybody showing up at Zeeland Charter Township, or better known as the Promised Land. We're doing pretty well this year. We have, so far we've done 31 new home permits for new homes so far this year. We're in the process right now. They're on Byron Road and 76th Avenue. They're starting a subdivision. First phase will start now. When the second phase and everything is done, it'll have 82 homes in that subdivision. For those of you that use Byron Road for access to wherever, starting next week Monday, Byron Road will be closed for 1 to 2 weeks to put utilities underneath the road over there. So good luck on that. Another one we have is Redwood Living, which is located out of Ohio. It's building the new development over on 84th Avenue and Homestead Drive next to the Holland Hospital. That building will have 22 units of, there's a couple of them that are only 2 units to a building, but there'll be 22 buildings for 86 high-end rental living units in it, and they have already taken out permits on 24 of the units, which would be 6 buildings. So that's going along real well. It's actually being built by an Amish group out of Charlotte. They go through the state and do this for this Redwood Living all over through the state and that. Gentex is going to start a new building exactly like the one they have over there on the north side of Riley Street now. That'll start in sometime in July. We've had numerous rezonings for various uses. Most of them are from agricultural to like commercial or industrial or what else it is. So, for Punkage and Steve were talking earlier about computers and all this stuff that's going to make it so hard to get or not to do and how to do it. I just came across something here, and it said someday we old folks, which there's several of us here, will use cursive as a secret code. And then last but not least, I just got this through from Al Dannenberg. He sends this out every month. This isn't just for our area, but it's for the county. In May of 2017, there were 577 new listings, and 343 houses were sold, or units were sold, and the average price $242,538. So you have to know that things are moving. In fact, Al put a little note in there with it. He said, "You think it's hot outside?" He said, "You ought to be in the market." So anyway, thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. Any input or discussion items from any other members? If not, I know Steve had something to share.
That's right. So I sent you a communication a while back about the status or health status of Hannes Myers, one of our members, and he called me just today and said to please pass along to all of you his greetings, and sorry that he couldn't be joining us, certainly. He also wanted to express his gratitude. Evidently, a number of you have been in contact with him and sending well wishes and so forth. And he certainly appreciates those and wanted to make sure that you were aware of his gratitude for those well wishes. One member of this board, Jim Story, upon receiving the communication that I sent out regarding Hannes, took action and said we need to, recognize all of Hannes's contributions. So he contacted Representative Jim Lilly's office and informed him of the situation, and they agreed that a citizen of Hannes's stature needed to be recognized at the state level. And his office, I believe, was the lead. Jim, do I have that right? In putting together a tribute recognizing Hannes's service. It was kind of funny. I think they contacted Jim as well, but they contacted me and they said, okay, what are the things that Hannes has done? It's like, what? I mean, how much space do you have? You're going to need 3 of these things. So I think it was agreed to really focus, since this was coming from the state of Michigan, that it be focused around his activities at the state level. So certainly, I believe he's still the longest serving, is still noted and recognized as the longest serving member of the MDOT Transportation Commission. So it talks about his work on the Transportation Commission as well, of course, when he was a judge for Ottawa County. It was noted in there as well, and some of his bench work after he was done with his judgeship. So those are noted in there as well. There's a photo. This took place at his home, and fortunately a number of his family members could also be in attendance to witness him receiving this. So it was just a wonderful opportunity there to recognize a great person who's given so much, not only to the MACC area and certainly to the county, but to the state as well. So I just wanted to certainly extend his greetings that he passed along this morning to let you know that this event took place as well, and to thank Jim for getting it rolling. So
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
I just wanted to add to that, Steve. He was a Sunday school teacher of mine a long time ago. But an excellent one at that. I didn't learn a lot from him, but it's not his fault.
Clever to say, but
I always razz him that he's of course he's University of Michigan graduate, but he's also a Calvin graduate.
Okay.
So I said, well, you got half of it right. So, both grads.
Well, then there's still hope, you have to say.
Yeah, and I've known Hannes for a while, but I'd only known him as a judge. I didn't realize how much other things that he had done till I joined the MACC, and goes back many, many years at the state level.
Yeah. And his local accomplishments. I mean, he's been a member of the Zealand Rotary longer than I've been alive. I mean, it just goes on and on and on from Sundays. Yeah.
Well, and I think his demeanor belies the level of participation and the amount of the heaviness of the mantle of leadership that he wore so gracefully.
Yeah.
He always had such a kind, gentle demeanor, no matter what was going on around him, and he really modeled a level of civility that I hope, we can all live up to.
Yep, definitely. Well, on that high note, if there's no other issues to be discussed, just need a motion. Oh wait, next meeting is July 24th at Olive Township Hall at noon.
So that we're back to our regular fourth Monday of the month there.
And now, if we don't have any other items to discuss, just need a motion to adjourn. Second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. All right. Have a great day.